Hello again, gang. Welcome to the fourth installment in our Chapter 26 lecture series for your textbook, Give Me Liberty, by Dr. Eric Foner. This section is entitled The Rising Tide of Conservatism. The focus question for this section is, what were the roots of the rise of conservatism in the 1970s? In the 1970s, conservatives saw a political opportunity in the economic downturn and emphasized issues of individual freedom. A new conservative movement known as neoconservatives charged that the 1960s led to a decline in moral standards and respect for authority. The freedom espoused by 60s counterculture basically equaled moral anarchy to neoconservatives. The rise of religious fundamentalism in the 1970s also helped to expand the popular base of conservatism. Fundamentalists used modern technology like television and radio to wage a war against sin, especially the ongoing sexual revolution. Conservatives rallied and coordinated, especially at the local level elections, and particularly with local school boards, through which they hope to instill conservative values in the next generation of Americans. The Equal Rights Amendment, first proposed in the early 1920s in the first wave of feminism in the 20th century, was revived by second-wave feminists in the 1970s. This, however, aroused unexpected protests from those, especially conservative women, who claimed it discredited the role of wife and mother, and conservatives clung to a rhetoric of family values to fight back against the Equal Rights Amendment. A conservative woman by the name of Phyllis Schlafly organized opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment and oversaw the amendment's demise. It never got the required amount of states to pass it in order for it to become part of the U.S. Constitution. And this happened despite what was seen as widespread approval from most Americans in this period. The next issue that faced profound conservative backlash was the abortion controversy. The movement to overturn the Roe v. Wade decision, which made abortion legal in the United States, began with Catholics, but was soon adopted by evangelical Christians. These evangelicals claimed that abortion promoted sexual immorality, and they insisted that life began at conception, and therefore abortion was murder. This drew a bitter, sometimes violent line through American politics. The right to life, the right to choose, which right is more right? That became the question, and that's something that has never really been sufficiently answered in American politics, even to this day. Today, abortion rights are maintained, but they are severely curtailed by laws in some states, of course, particularly more conservative-leaning states. The economic crisis of the 1970s also inspired a conservative critique, particularly a critique of government and government involvement in the economy. Interestingly, this was quite the opposite reaction to economic distress as that found during the Great Depression, where most of the blame for the economic issues were placed on business, and government was seen as the answer to those issues. This pretty much was flip-flopped on its head in the 1970s. There were conservative demands for lower taxes in order to enhance business profits and reduce funds available to the government for new spending programs. They argued that government regulations raised the cost of doing business and stifled job growth. And they argued that tax decreases would reduce the burdens on Americans harmed by the reduction in real wages due to inflation. As the election of 1980 came around, Carter's approval rating was very low, and a conservative tide rose throughout the Western world, not just in the United States. Carter was damaged not only by his perceived inability to deal with the economic crisis, but also his inability to address the Iran hostage crisis. Ronald Reagan's 1980 campaign brought together various strands of conservatism and appealed both to white backlash and the religious right. Interestingly as well, Reagan's VP candidate, George H.W. Bush, or George Bush Sr., a former head of the CIA, secretly negotiated with Iran to ensure that the hostages would not be released before the election, cementing the damage to Carter over the Iran hostage crisis, and based on the fact that the hostages were released once Reagan was elected, Reagan got to claim the credit for the release of those hostages. This launched the Reagan Revolution in American politics. That does it for part 4 of our Chapter 26 lecture series for your textbook, Give Me Liberty by Dr. Eric Foner. As always, study hard, and I'll see you soon.